Hello, everybody. My name is Dean of the InkGuild, and welcome back to another episode of Shorthand. For this episode, we're going to be looking at episode 11, which is part 1 of Gabe, Alex, and I's collection of our favorite characters. Let's not waste any time and get right into the highlights. Today, we are going to be talking about our favorite characters. With such a broad topic like that, I feel like I should start narrowing what we mean. So, by our favorite characters, I mean pretty much any characters across movies, TV shows, books, video games, whatever. But we did have a couple limitations, and I think our priority was no original characters, so no characters that we've created, because we've already done or we're planning to do our own episodes on that. To get properly started with the list, my first actual character that I want to talk about, and one of my personal favorite characters as of recent memory, is John Wick from the John Wick movies. What makes him so likable and what makes him one of my favorite characters, at least, is that he's just so cool. How he's presented and how his story is told throughout, I guess, the 3 movies and eventually the 4th one, is so entertaining to watch. Like how he carries himself as this very slick, very collected individual, but at the same time is so badass when it comes to fighting and when it comes to, getting his way. It's so cool, pretty much. I wish I could probably come up with a better way of saying it, but yeah, John Wick's just pretty badass. And he's my first character. I think
wiping out the Russian mob to avenge your dog is pretty based.
Yeah. There's not too much. Like I said, you could pretty much just sum up his entire motivation, as Gabe just did, within a sentence. But how that all carries forward, it's there's still enough about his cool factor to kind of keep you invested. There's no fancy armors, no fancy weapons or stuff like that. It's just a guy with a gun, and it's Keanu Reeves. I guess all of my last minute points have kind of been brought in. Alex, who is your first character?
I just changed the order of my list because you said something about the actor portraying the character, and I was like, okay. So my first pick is Hannibal Lecter from the TV show Hannibal, specifically because I haven't finished any other versions of the story. In the show, he's played by the actor Mads Mikkelsen, and he does a brilliant job of making Hannibal both a likable character and also the worst person imaginable. Honestly, the writing in the show is brilliant, but I think even with the writing as good as it is, it'd be difficult to be as impressed by another actor as I am with Mads Mikkelsen as Hannibal. He does a good job of making Hannibal very charismatic. Hannibal's a show I've watched multiple times at this point, and honestly, the more times you watch it, the less I like, or the more times I watch it, the less I like Hannibal as a character. But the first time you watch it, you're kind of going through, and just because of how charismatic he is as a character, you're okay, I know he's a serial killer, but is he? The writing
I'm
of
pretty
the show,
sure he is.
He makes eating people look very sexy.
Yeah,
he is a serial killer. Mm-hmm. He's not a good person at all. But the way the show is written and the way the character is played as this charismatic guy, he gets along with everyone. He's incredibly clever and always gets away with everything for a long time. And so when you're watching the show the first time, especially the first season, it really makes you go, okay, I know that he's the one who's doing this stuff, but you're so convinced by his performance as as a person that you're kind of like it makes you doubt it, which I think is brilliant writing, because that's kind of how the characters in the show would be feeling about Hannibal as a person. And I think being able to reflect that in the TV show's writing is also brilliant. The writing in Hannibal is honestly top tier. It's like a beautifully artistic show, and I think it really captures that appeal of like serial killers that seems to be like sweeping through our society right now, because it's like every episode there's like multiple dead bodies and it's really horrific and gory. If you can't handle gore, don't watch this show. But like at the same time, it's like the way that everything is presented it's so artistic, and it's like you're like, that's like really disturbing, but also it's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that, again, this is just me talking about how much I love Hannibal the show and also the character, but I think that the way the show presents itself and the way it presents the character of Hannibal like mesh together really well.
Cool. So Gabe, who's your first of your favorite characters?
The first of my favorite characters is a character who is just, as described by another character in this game, is known as the prickly prick who will bury us all. His name is Daniil Dankovsky. He's the protagonist of a game called Pathologic. I remember you and me talked about this, Dean. He's I love him so much. He's so well characterized. As basically his backstory is that he's this ambitious young doctor fresh out of like med school who goes to this town in the like Russian steppe because he wants to cure death essentially, and he finds that there's this guy who is super old, and he goes to this town, and a whole bunch of shit unfolds after that. But Daniil Dankovsky is one of the wildest characters to play as in a video game, and to just experience secondhand if you play as one of the other playable protagonists. But he's such a dickhead. He has such flagrant disregard for the town and the townspeople, and he's so like well characterized as a dick too. There's like one of my favorite things about him. There's like, when you play as him, there's like dialogue prompts you can choose that are the worst thing you could possibly say like to this person in this context. Like there are people in this town who have clairvoyancy and like can see the future, and as the Bachelor you can disregard all of them and just be an asshole. He has like prompts where you can just out of turn say a Latin phrase because he thinks it sounds cool to say out just a Latin phrase out of context, and it'll make him look smart. He's so well characterized as just this snobbish elitist dickhead, and I don't know why, but I'm so in love with him. Every time I go to play this game, I have to play as the Bachelor because he's just so entertaining to play as, and he's so like interesting to just see the world and see this story through the mindset of a man who's just has no regard for human lives and just wants to do his science stuff. I guess, and he's got a wicked design too.
Nice.
He looks like a character straight out of like Dishonored or something. His costume, you can't see his costume because it's a first person game, obviously, but like I think even down to his costume, there's aspects of characters you can read. Like he's going into this town with scientific ambition, and he's worn like the best suit he could find. He's not really here to like be a scientist. He's not really here to do good. He's here to impress people. He wants to impress his scientific peers by accomplishing this incredible achievement of curing death, and he wants to look as cool as possible doing it. Mm-hmm. He has no regard for people around him, and that's something that you like get into a lot when you play as both his character and when you play as the Haruspecs. You get into the fact that the Bachelor is this influential character in this story, and he has a huge role to play into whether or not this plague will be cured. And this is a man who has very little regard for human lives. His goal is to create a vaccine, and he doesn't give a shit about the people at all. I know there's a lot of games that try moral ambiguity or like will have you play a straight up evil character. Mm-hmm. But what I love about the Bachelor is he's not really straight up evil, more that he's just an ignorant, uncaring dickhead.
It's interesting. So our first three picks, respectively, are in their own ways very, like, I guess controversial in a way. Like John Wick is a very snappy,
very dark.
snappy killer. Hannibal Lecter is I guess a charming
Serial
cannibal. Yeah, charming.
And a cannibal.
Yeah.
Serial killing cannibal.
Yeah, and then so we've got the Bachelor, who is this arrogant or ignorant dickhead. It's interesting I say this because my next character is so far from that, and it's a Disney character, and more specifically, it is a robot named Wall-E.
Best boy.
Yeah. So it's interesting though, like how they've given this model or like this Wall-E model sentience, pretty much. So the ability to kind of look at human emotion and feel what it's like to love and hold hands and stuff, like how important it is to have connection, especially for like a robot that doesn't necessarily need to have that. Like, I guess when it comes to robot stories that like, or I guess like robots learning or understanding human sentience and emotion, like that's always fascinated me. And Wall-E, I think, certainly is the one that best illustrates it, not just for adults, but for kids. Like you kind of like kids can pretty much understand the movie on its own. Like you don't really need complex thinking to understand Wall-E. But with adults, like now that you know so much about it, like it's kind of like, or now that you know so much compared to when you were a kid, it's like you can really understand just how interesting and how important emotion is to a robot like Wall-E, who is designed pretty much for one thing. Like his relationship with Eve, his relationship with the cockroach, pretty much, and just interacting with the humans up on the spaceship that I suddenly can't remember. Like it's so cute and it's so charming. Like how like I've talked about how characters carry themselves, and Wall-E is like, he's so cute. He's just so lovable. Like you don't really like, he doesn't need to like express in words just how incredible he is. It's a lot of showing how genuinely good this character is, which is, I guess, like a big thing for storytelling, right? Like you're obviously told to show and not tell. And with Wall-E, it's like the chirp, like the little sounds that he makes when he's, you know, trying to like communicate, like how his eyes pretty much just like fold in and out whenever he's trying to express his emotions. Like it's almost never verbal sometimes, and that I think is what makes him a really compelling character, in the sense that he doesn't need to ever really say anything. I feel like we should now move on. So Alex, who is your second favorite character?
Yeah, the second character that I'm talking about, because I just finished season 3 of this show, is Anne from Anne with an E, which is one of the more recent adaptations of Anne of Green Gables. And I haven't like read the books or seen any other adaptations of it, so this was kind of my first exposure to that character. And like I kind of like fell in love with her a little bit. She's kind of, I think, like she's the kind of character that I could see myself really liking as a kid if I had bothered to pick up the books at all. Like she's very imaginative, and she's not afraid to like be herself. Which is something I really like about her. She's very unique compared to the people around her. But she's also, I think, a very realistic character in that like she's committed to being herself, and she's committed to standing up for herself, but she still has moments of doubt, and she still like makes mistakes that she has to deal with. Anne with an E is a very weird show for me because it's like historical fiction, which is not something I delve into very often. But I think like Anne is a very realistic character, and I think there's just something about watching her interact with her new world that is very endearing. She's a cute character. She's very fun. She likes to play imagination, and like pretend to be other characters and like have these deep conversation. And she's really good at like speaking up and like delivering poetry. She's also incredibly smart in a time where it wasn't as accepted for women to be smart. And it's like the show is 3 seasons. I'm pretty sure it was canceled after season 3, which I'm really upset about. But like you kind of like watch her grow up from like a young orphan girl who's finding a family for the first time, and then the effect that she has on the community around her, and like the way that she stands up for people, and she stands up for herself, and she makes people think about things in a different way. I was actually debating whether I wanted to talk about Anne or her best friend Diana, because Diana is another really interesting character in the show, in that Diana is from like a high class family. She's very rich. She has these expectations of going to finishing school in Paris, and then coming back to Canada and being like a perfect housewife. And Anne is and Diana is like kind of, because she's been raised in this specific kind of family, she has this she's fairly close-minded at the beginning of the show, and you know, watch her through her friendship with Anne. She becomes more and more open-minded. She starts caring about like who she is as a person. She starts going, well, it's my life, it's not my parents' life. If I don't want to go to Paris to go to finishing school, maybe I shouldn't have to. And it's just really interesting to see the effect that Anne has on like all the characters, but on Diana specifically. Like there's multiple times where Diana will be faced with something that she's been told her whole life is wrong or bad or not right. And Anne will embrace it wholeheartedly, and it'll make Diana stop and think like, maybe it's not wrong. Maybe my parents were wrong about that. And
anyway, Gabe, who is your second pick?
My second pick is a character called Vino from this awesome obscure anime that no one else I know has ever watched, called Bakano. Have either of you guys seen Bakano? Please tell me one of you guys has seen Bakano.
I have not.
It's on my list.
I know about it, but
I would definitely bump it up your list. It is underrated as hell. And Vino is an incredible character from Bakano. Basically, Vino's whole deal is that he's an assassin for the mob, and his gimmick, I guess, his assassin gimmick is that he's named Vino, is nicknamed Vino, which is the Italian word for wine, because he always walks away from crime scenes just completely drenched in blood. Like, he looks like he's soaked in wine, essentially. So he's earned the nickname Vino. Very sinister. Just like from an action standpoint, he's a total badass. Every time he's on screen, he's like doing acrobatic kicks and flips. He's like a former circus performer. That's in his backstory. They don't really go too in depth in that, but he's an incredible character to watch. He's animated really well. The best part is that halfway through the story, there's one arc in the story, a train robbery. There's these two gangs that are both trying to rob a train at the same time. It's revealed that he's also a potentially supernatural serial killer called the Rail Tracer, whose whole thing is that he whenever he's not being an assassin, he's a train conductor, and if there are ever like people trying to rob his train, he becomes this demon, the Rail Tracer, who hunts down and brutally murders anyone on the train who doesn't have a ticket. It's insanity to watch him like as a character play out. He's so averse to like any of the seriousness of the mafia. He's so averse to like any of the drama of the two gangs, like having a sort of gang war on this train. He's just a complete subversive to basically any prior established plot point. He just comes in to literally throw a wrench into the machine and just disrupt everything you think you know about the series.
Yeah.
He has an insane philosophy too, which I don't want to get too into it because the way he explains it is so entertaining to watch. I don't totally want to spoil it, but he basically believes he's God. He essentially believes that he's like the center of the universe, and not like in an egotistical way, like he's the most important person. He literally believes he's the only person, and that everything else, every single other person in his reality is a figment of his imagination, and that when he dies, everything else will cease to exist.
Oh, wow.
It's it's bonkers. It's so much better than I can really give it credit for.
So, I guess now we're rounding up our last set of picks for now, because we are doing two parts to this list. So my third pick for now is Nathan Drake from the Uncharted games. And again, just to get the personal stuff out of the way first, he was pretty much like one of the three big PlayStation exclusive characters that really kind of stuck with me and what made me fall in love with playing video games more, essentially. Like, so it was Nathan Drake, Sackboy, and one other character that I'll get to in part 2 of this. But Nathan Drake is just so charismatic. Like, he's so likable. Like, how... And I guess it's just towards the delivery of two factors: the writing and Nolan North, who is his voice actor. Nolan North is just phenomenal. I love him so much. I cannot imagine Nathan Drake as anybody else. Maybe Nathan Fillion, but that's wishful thinking. But yeah, so Nolan North as Nathan Drake has been, those two have been related. You can't really separate the two of them since Uncharted 1. And it's just so how he just delivers his performance, or how he delivers his performance with so much charisma and so much so much swagger sometimes to this character. Whenever he's quipping with Elena, or having exchanges with Sully, there's so much genuine heart there that it feels like a real conversation, that he really does suck you into the world that you that they've put yourself, it sucks you into the world pretty much because of just how real and authentic Nolan North's performance is. And it helps too that on top of voice acting, he's also doing a lot of the motion capture for it, so you can kind of understand just how much Nolan North is putting into this character. And the other factor that I mentioned as to what makes Nathan Drake one of my favorite characters is the writing, and just how smarmy he can be sometimes, but at the same time how sharp he is with his attention to detail just makes him really well-rounded. He is he can be a pompous dickhead towards one character at some point, but then he can also be very sharp, very very alert, and I guess he really pays attention. He takes what he does very seriously, but he knows when to joke around and when to have some fun and cut loose a little bit, which makes him which doesn't make him static which doesn't make him a static character by any means. It makes him very dynamic. It makes him it shows that there's a lot more to him than just being a treasure hunter or being a dickhead. He's a well-rounded, likable asshole. So moving on, Alex, who is your third and final pick for this episode?
Her name is Jester, and I am sending you guys an image because I love her design.
Ooh.
Oh my god!
Oh,
so Critical Role.
Yeah,
Critical Role is a D&D show. It's a podcast / web series. You have a bunch of well-known voice actors sitting around playing D&D together. And so Jester is the character in the second campaign of Laura Bailey. She's a tiefling cleric, a trickster cleric specifically. So she's basically one of the more chaotic characters on the show. Mm-hmm. She follows the god known as the Traveler. And basically she spends a lot of time... there's one scene in particular I can think of where they go to a temple of, I want to say it's the Platinum Dragon, and she just basically spends a good few minutes just graffitiing dicks all over one of the statues.
Oh, I love her so much already.
Queen.
She's a high energy.
Queen shit. She's so great already.
We stand.
Yeah. She's a diehard romantic. She likes cute things. She's a cleric, so one of her main weapons is a spiritual weapon. Her spiritual weapon is a giant lollipop.
That's so cute.
And you can see in the image I sent to the group chat, she's got these little pink hamster unicorns that she can summon.
I love her outfit.
Yeah, this is her level 10 redesign. I can send her like original one as well because it's also really cute. Yeah, she's high energy, gets along great with all of her friends. She's like one of the few characters in like this campaign that doesn't have like a mysterious backstory, which, you know, is a D&D like stereotype, like trope that's used a lot. But she's just fun loving. She's looking for her father. She's very supportive of her mother, who's a courtesan. And she's super excitable. She tends to put like everyone else before herself. Like she has a lot of insecurities and stuff, but she tends to kind of like shove that down on the surface and focus on her friends and the people she cares about. There's like a recurring joke about how she's like a cleric who doesn't like to heal people. I'm trying to remember all the things I love about her. There's so much I could talk about. I adore her.
We have one final character to discuss before we move into part 2.
Yeah.
So, Gabe, who is your third and final character for this episode?
My final character is a character called Senator Armstrong from a game. Have you guys ever played the Metal Gear games?
I haven't played all of them, but I have played.
No.
I have played a few of them.
Have you played Revengeance?
No, and that's probably why I don't recognize them, or don't recognize Senator Armstrong.
Okay, all right. So first of all, yeah, the game is called Revengeance. Just to set the tone for what that game is, but Senator Armstrong, I think I one of the reasons why I love him is I know that we've been doing it before we get into why we love the character. Talk about like what the character is in the story, and part of the reason why I love Senator Armstrong so much as a character is how seemingly flagrantly in defiance of narrative tradition he is. So, for context, you basically go through the whole campaign, you're playing as Raiden, and you're going through this whole conspiracy, and at the tail end of the game, in the last 40 minutes, the main villain appears for the first time. and from that description, you might think, oh, well, that's stupid. What a terrible way to introduce a character in a story. And in any other story, you would probably be right. That's a terrible way to integrate an antagonist into a story. But
yeah, especially the main one.
Yeah, this is the main villain. Like, there's no mincing words about it. This is the character who has been the mastermind behind all of the conspiracy that you've been unraveling for the game. This is the first time he's appearing in the entire game. He shows up for a maximum of 40 minutes in a 10-hour campaign. And he's the best character in the whole game. He's one of the best characters in the series. He shows up. All right, for comparison. All right, name think of any story that you really like, and imagine that it has no villain up until the last 40 minutes where a senator dressed in a business suit who looks like Hulk Hogan shows up, starts screaming about how awesome right-wing politics are, beats up your protagonist. They get into the craziest fist fight you've ever seen, and that's Armstrong. This is not a game that took itself seriously. Like, up to this point, there's a line where a character unironically says the sentence, "Your memes end here." This is not a game. There's a character called Monsoon, and this whole deal. What?
Did I hear that right? Your memes end here?
Hang on, I will send the screenshot.
I don't think he started. And even if he did, I'm still believing him.
A major plot point of this game's story is that there are memes, and they're trying to control America using memes.
That's amazing.
And Senator Armstrong's deal is that he wants to use American memes to start a war with Pakistan because he wants to reignite the war economy. There are so many lines that this man spouts that are just pure gold. There's There's the aforementioned "Don't fuck with this senator." There's "I played college ball, you know," and to which Raiden says, "At some cushy Ivy League school," and he says, "Try University of Texas. Could have gone pro if I hadn't joined the Navy."